Okay, welcome all. My name is Sherry Simarusti. I'm the Associate Executive Director of Angel Flight West, and I'm happy to have you all join us here today. Uh, as the slide says, Happy New Year. Hope you are all doing well and safe from the Southern California fires. Today we are going to do just a video introduction of the team, the mission operations team. I'll talk to you a little bit about a mission moment. Um, we will talk about our upcoming town hall schedule. And we're going to tell you about the 2024 year impact. And then Andy, who's our speaker today, will start. So meet the team. This is the mission operations team. Most of them are on today. They're called here today. We have mission coordinators Natalie Peters, Maddie Eichten, Julia Brecker, and our operations manager Alejandro Ramirez. And we have our volunteer coordinators, Rochelle Matterall and David Nathan. Those are the folks that handle all of the missions. And as you'll see when you do when you see Andy's slides, when he says reach out to the staff, these are the people who you'll be reaching out to. We'd like to start with a mission moment, which is just telling you a little bit about what we do. And I wanted to take just a moment today to bring up something that's been pretty cool. Daniel Chung, the guy in the front of this photo here, is one of our board members. He is a fractional owner of a Pilatus out of Cutter Aviation in Phoenix. And he has decided that he's going to use some of his time in that airplane to do angel flight missions. This is one for a guy going for treatment. Um, and this is a great picture of them playing cards and having fun together. This was in early January, and then Daniel took another flight of his in later January where he actually went early and spent the day at this gentleman's family barbecue in celebration of Martin Luther King Day. He took four friends of his along with him. They went to this man's home, enjoyed the day there, and then got in the airplane and flew him to treatment. So thank you to Daniel and all he's doing to further the Angel Flight mission. Just wanted to briefly go over the impact Angel Flight West had in 2024. We completed 3,221 pilot legs flown. So what that means is we do have a relationship with Alaska Airlines and Hawaiian Airlines and some other airlines that we do, or as many of you know, if we could need to back up a flight with a Southwest flight or a Delta flight, but 3,221 flights were flown by our pilots. That 642 pilots who flew at least one mission or more, flew 1,436 commercial flights. We completed 1,462 ground legs. Many of those were done using our Access for All Fund, which is some money that we have available to us to both backup flights by those Southwest flights I mentioned, and then we also use those for lift rides. But also included in those ground legs were 172 Earth Angels who drove one trip or more. And what we're seeing more and more is our command pilots who, when it works for them, so either at their home airport or at an airport where they feel comfortable getting a crew car or something, they're doing the ground legs as well. Not required for sure, but pretty cool. We served 1,339 unique passengers and 591 unique healthcare requesters. So pretty big impact the Angel Flight West had on the healthcare community in 2024, and we hope to do even more this year. Now I'm going to introduce Andy Wheeler. He is a brand new command pilot, and as you can see, is already flying up a storm. And I'm going to let Andy speak about himself. So there you go, Andy.
Hi, good to meet you all. I'm Andy Wheeler. I've been an Angel Flight West pilot since August of 2024, so not super long. So if most of you are new pilots, I was in your shoes just a few months ago. I've flown just over 20 missions so far, and I've done a few ground leg Earth Angel missions as well. Living in San Francisco, oftentimes the passengers coming to the Bay Area for treatment are going to the city, to places like UCSF. And so when that's the case, I often just pick up the ground leg as well. But as mentioned, you don't need to do that. I'm currently based at San Carlos, used to be based in Oakland and Santa Rosa, so Bay Area the whole time. I fly Bonanza G36 and about 750 hours total. My email address is here. If for some reason we don't get to a question you wanted to ask in the Q&A, or if you just want to connect, happy to chat with anyone. So feel free to reach out. Next slide.
David, will you drop that in the chat, please?
And so just wanted to start off with maybe talking a little bit about kind of why we all and myself volunteer. I think probably this is somewhat self-evident, but I wanted to just kind of highlight the things that have been most meaningful for me in participating in Angel Flight West. I would say for most of my working life, I've primarily contributed to nonprofits financially or occasionally sitting on nonprofit boards. And those are obviously both great and fulfilling ways to help. But they're pretty abstracted from the work that the organizations do. And it usually means you're not sort of directly experiencing the impact of those organizations when you give in those ways. And so after I learned to fly, I started to think, got through a couple ratings, did my instrument rating. I started looking around for ways that I could continue flying, keep my skills up, but also give back. And so I looked at a bunch of the different volunteer flying organizations, went to several talks at Oshkosh, and heard one on Angel Flight West and thought this sounds like a great organization to participate in. And I've certainly found it to be a really meaningful way to use my skills as a pilot. We directly impact the lives of the people we fly. And so I'll talk about a couple stories of passengers I've flown. Obviously, it's a great way to build time, keep your skills sharp. I've flown more kind of real approaches in IFR conditions doing Angel flights than in previous everyday flying where maybe you'll be a little less inclined to go out in IFR days. I think it really also builds professionalism in your flying to be flying passengers you don't know. It's definitely different than flying your friends and family. And also it's actually a great way to get to airports and places that maybe you haven't been before or wouldn't have normally gone to. The picture here that you see is Riley in the middle and his mother, Christy, who I brought to the Bay Area from Casper, Wyoming, for some specialty surgery that was really only available in a couple places in the US, and this was the closest one to their home. And given the duration of that flight, I spent a night in Casper in each direction. I both picked them up and brought them home. So got to go see a museum, went on a hike, got to kind of go to a place that I'd never been to before. So I think these are all the kinds of opportunities you get flying for something like Angel Flight West. And also, as a quick aside, if you want to rack up your missions quickly, this one was a 3-leg mission in each direction, but I did all 3 legs. In my particular plane, that actually was 2 legs each direction. So anyway, you can rack up the rack up the legs by picking long missions. And there's a section on the volunteer website specifically if you're looking for long missions. Okay, next slide. So a few more passenger stories. This is Erica here in the middle. She's a single mom who was diagnosed with an aggressive breast cancer that's required her to spend really significant time getting care at UCSF in the Bay Area away from her son. She lives in Arcata, which is far northern California. So that's like an 11-hour round trip drive to the Bay Area. So obviously a flight can save an enormous amount of time. She's had stretches where she's had to be in the Bay Area for several weeks for treatment. And Angel Flight has allowed her to occasionally go home to see her son on a weekend during those stretches. And then on the flip side, when she's mostly at home and needs an occasional doctor visit in the Bay Area, Angel Flight's allowed her to do that kind of in a day or 2 days rather than a multi-day trip if she had to drive. And also sort of her energy level at various times means that she wouldn't have been able to do that drive. Somebody else would have to drive her. So really significant savings for her. And you can see the note of thanks that she sent me right after Christmas. And I think that's just kind of shows you how much we're impacting these people's lives that they're sending notes like this. So really, again, very meaningful for these folks. Next slide. One more just quick story. This is Emma. She was born with spina bifida or spina bifida and club feet. This is Jamie holding her, who's her godmother. And she has to travel regularly to UCSF Children's Hospital from Crescent City, which is about a 7-hour one-way drive. So you can imagine that's really a big impact that we can have by turning that into maybe a 2-hour flight. instead of having to drive 7 hours, much of on Highway 1, which is, as you probably know, is windy and twisty. They're also an hour and a half from the nearest commercial airport, and the flight from there to SFO is relatively expensive. So again, kind of pretty meaningful impact we can have saving time, money, and hassle for them to go to UCSF. Jamie was super appreciative of our ability to save basically a full day of driving in each direction with a young child. So to talk maybe about your first mission, if you haven't done one yet, I'll tell you the story of mine, which maybe was very accelerated. So I finished Angel Flight training on a Friday, I think. And on Monday, I got an email saying, "Oh, you've been accepted as command pilot. Like, kind of thanks for completing your training." Well, okay, great. Kind of browsed around the website, and that was it. And then the next morning, my phone rang, and it was Angel Flight coordinator saying, "Hey, we saw you signed up as a new pilot. There's a flight that we think would be great for you tomorrow." And I thought, "Oh, wow, that's really fast." And but then I thought, well, I only have one easy to move meeting tomorrow morning, and might as well just jump right in, right? So, just a few days after finishing training, I was taking my first passenger. And in another interesting twist, I think it was later that day or the morning of the flight, I got another call saying, "Hey, there's actually a second passenger at a nearby airport from the first passenger. Can you take two at once?" So my first mission actually turned into two missions. So another great way to rack up more missions quickly. Um, so, I'll say the mission that the coordinators found for me was very much like in a sweet spot. It was a duration that I'd flown many times. It was actually to the airport where I'd done my first solo cross country, and to the airport where I'd, based my plane for about a year. So all airports I was familiar with, great duration. Obviously, being the day ahead, we had a really good view of the weather. The next day was a beautiful VFR day. And also all the passengers had traveled with Angel Flight West before, meaning they were familiar with small planes, with the procedure, with the airports they were going to. And so I think all of those things are really helpful for your first mission. Try to minimize the number of things that are different for you. So hopefully maybe just the transporting of the passenger. So if they've flown before, it's airports it's good weather, that'll just reduce the stress and mean that you're really only dealing kind of with one thing that's new on this flight. Alternatively, this is obviously not the path I did, but if you're more comfortable with it, you can volunteer as a mission assistant so that you go along with somebody on an Angel flight and see one end to end, and see how it's done. So that's an alternative pathway if you're not quite as comfortable, maybe just jumping straight in. But obviously you can tell from that story, the Angel Flight West coordinators are a great resource. They're already looking out for flights for you that could be a good match as your first one. And also like feel free to reach out with them. And then obviously the volunteer website is a great way to filter and see everything that's available. Right. So just kind of a smattering of tips that some of which are things that I wish I'd heard. Others are things that have come out in previous town halls. I'll just kind of jump around to some random topics here, and then we can get to Q&A. First, I would say, there's a lot of communication that goes into an Angel Flight West mission. Obviously, between Angel Flight West and the passenger, importantly, between you and Angel Flight West, and between you and the passenger. Maybe something good to remember is that the passengers are all in different places, right? We're transporting folks who, may be relatively young or maybe relatively older, maybe familiar with technology, maybe not. So I think it's good to keep in mind that you should meet people where they are technology-wise. So maybe bend your preferences between text and live voice calls to what it seems like the passenger wants to hear, or how they want to communicate. It's great to communicate as much as you can expectations for the flight ahead of time. If it's maybe not ideal weather or maybe a little bumpy, like maybe give them a heads up so they can be mentally prepared for that. I've flown several flights now that cross the Sierras. And obviously that requires going up high enough that passengers should be on oxygen. And I've also had to go up that high for IFR conditions. So that's definitely something you should talk to. Not all Angel Flight West pilots will use oxygen. So even if your passengers experienced traveler with Angel Flight West, they may not have actually encountered O2 if you're going to be using it. The other thing, especially for new Angel Flight West passengers, you really want to confirm all the details of where you're meeting, the time. They may not be familiar with FBOs. If you're meeting at a commercial airport, you want to make sure they don't go to the terminal. And often bigger airports have multiple FBOs, so just make sure all the details are kind of locked down for that. Always great to double check previous flying experience, any special needs from a mobility standpoint they may have, baggage, any questions or concerns, all the standard stuff that you would want if you were the passenger. So in terms of briefings, I won't go into what's required in an FAA briefing. I'm sure you all know that. So obviously cover all the required topics, but I think maybe more so than you might do with a typical friend, make sure you really cover expectations for the flight itself around things like weather and turbulence. Try to flight plan, obviously, at an altitude that'll minimize turbulence, but there's often turbulence near the ground. So on days like that, I always try to make sure folks know, hey, look, like we're going to be taking off through turbulence, but it should be a smooth flight after a few minutes, those sorts of things. Sterile cockpit, super important, especially when you're transporting children. They can be pretty loud and talkative. When I'm transporting more than one person, I give them the option of do they want to be connected to the airplane audio or just talking about themselves. Not every plane can do that, but if they can, especially with kids, that can be helpful. Like I found it helpful for myself to not be listening to a toddler chattering the whole time. Yeah, the rest of it I think we kind of covered. The other thing is, I mentioned passenger comfort around turbulence. Like again, try to think through all the things that a passenger might want on your plane. If they're not highly mobile, maybe they need a step stool to get into the plane. So make sure you have something like that. Tissues, sick bags, blankets if it gets cold in the back, obviously headsets or earplugs for the passengers, all things that you should have on the plane. Maybe bringing along some water as well, although pretty much every one of my passengers shows up with water. Yeah, so just a note, if you start flying for Angel Flight West and you haven't spent much time around larger airports, like Class Charlie type airports or Class Bravo, most of these airports obviously have large FBOs. Some also have landing fees, even for small planes. The FBOs in major airports will generally offer fee waivers, and many also offer fuel discounts for Angel flights. So it's best at a large airport to make a reservation and or call ahead. Like many of these, like Atlantic, people like that Signature, you can make a reservation online or you can call them and let them know in the comments or when you call them that you're an Angel flight to get those discounts. They will universally basically require a hard copy or an emailed copy of an Angel flight itinerary. Like the Port of Oakland requires the FBOs to submit that to get the landing fees waived. So make sure to save that. I've scrambled around at an airport trying to screenshot things on my phone when I couldn't find a PDF. So save yourself that hassle and have that saved if you're going to a big airport. Call sign seems to come up as a question topic in most of the town halls, so I thought I would try to address it right away. So in order to use an Angel Flight, you'll all assigned an Angel Flight call sign when you register. In order to use that, you do need to be able to set that in your transponder. That typically is not unlocked or without a dealer actually unlocking that functionality, at least on Garmin. So if you fly like a G1000 or most of the Garmin avionics to set the call sign, you do need to bring the plane to a dealer and they can simply turn on that functionality. And then if you have that functionality and you choose to use it, you only input the NGF Angel Flight call sign when there's actually a passenger on board. So obviously every Angel flight typically involves a repositioning leg and a leg with a passenger. You don't use it on the repositioning leg, you do use it with a passenger. If you don't own your plane or like me have been too lazy to get to a Garmin dealer and get the avionics updated, it's on my list but haven't gotten to it. You can still just tell ATC you're an Angel flight. So you won't use your Angel flight call sign with numbers, but you can simply verbally say to ATC that you're an Angel flight. And it's not required that they give you priority handling, but probably makes them less likely to kind of go send you way out of the way. So good thing to know. And the last thing I'll just touch on is canceling. Don't feel bad about canceling. It's always the right thing to do if there's any question about safety. Passengers are required to have a backup. Angel Flight coordinators make it extremely easy. I did have to cancel my first flight a few weeks ago when I found a fuel leak in one of my fuel cells when I went to pre-flight. I called Angel Flight West. They immediately took care of it. They were the ones who contacted the passenger, and I was able to, continue dealing my mechanical issue rather than coordinating with the passenger. So if anything is out of your comfort zone, just cancel. Like it's the right thing to do. The one flip side, maybe tip or request I would have there is if you think it's likely something is outside of your comfort zone, then maybe don't pick up the flight originally, right? And so the reason I say this is one of my passengers was telling me a story that they'd had a bunch of cancellations from the same pilot, always from weather from the origin airport as opposed to the destination airport, which is interesting. And we were talking about the airport. I know the airport, it's often fogged in the morning and fogged in below minimums for an instrument approach because it doesn't have a precision approach. But it's also, that's a pretty known weather phenomenon in that area. I think it's a totally reasonable personal minimum to have to not take off in conditions where you can't get back in on an instrument approach. But at the same time, other airports nearby have precision approaches. And so I think in that case, it would be better if maybe that person wasn't picking up those flights because then it involved a bunch of cancellations. So flip side there, cancel if you need to, but also be mindful about picking up flights if there's like a high likelihood you have to cancel. And with that, I'll just open up to general questions.
Great. Well, thank you very much. That was great. Well done. Take questions for Andy, things that he's experienced as a new pilot. Also, the mission operations staff is here. But first, let's see if anybody has any questions for Andy. Okay.
I think it's just a reflection of how perfect that presentation was.
Yeah,
And
no
so
kidding.
thorough. Thank you, Andy. Yeah, that was great.
To that point, I will say, Andy, that the staff, we have a messaging app that we use here, and we are messaging each other back and forth like, this guy is great. This guy's got it down pat. So really well done, seriously.
Thank you.
So,
Hey, Sherry, Ace Ellenwood here.
hi, Ace.
Yeah, that was excellent, Andy. The one thing that I've started doing too is when I initially contact a passenger, I'll text them a picture of the airplane sitting on the ground with the doors open so they can literally see what they're getting into if they haven't flown in a small plane before.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a quick one. Hi, Ford Frazier here. I haven't done my first mission yet, but I'm going to ASAP. I have a conventional Bonanza, not a Jeep model, so it doesn't have the big barn doors in the back. And so I'm a little concerned about passengers being able to get in and out, ingress and egress the airplane, especially considering the way the Bonanza is set up. The pilot goes in first and the passenger is the last one in. So there's nobody necessarily to assist them into the airplane if there's a problem climbing on the wing. I wonder if Andy has having a Bonanza, has he had passengers in the front? Has he had any issues with that?
Yeah, I've actually had plenty of passengers in the front. Typically, when it's one person, if they're even moderately mobile, they prefer to sit in the front.
Yeah.
And I give people the option, right? It's like, hey, if you want to sit in the back, you're welcome to. Otherwise, feel free to sit in the front and see all the action. So typically, yeah, it's a little bit, I don't know, contortionist or something. I'll usually get into the passenger seat and then kind of lean out to make sure I can still help them up onto the wing if necessary. And I show them there is a handhold, at least on my plane, kind of you can hold onto the back door as you climb up onto the wing. And I'll typically offer them a hand as they step down into the cockpit. So yeah, not super ideal, kind of on the low wing plane like that, but I don't know. I just personally contort a little bit to make it work.
Yeah. Okay.
And still be able to offer help.
Yeah. I mean, again, not having experienced it, I worry about, fragile people and people with, maybe mobility issues or something like that, getting in the air.
And definitely probably a good thing to chat about and with your passengers. But many of the passengers I've flown are actually relatively mobile.
Okay.
They may not have a lot of energy, but they're still able to move around. Like Angel Flight does require that they're mobile.
Thank you.
And we do, just so you're aware, we do a briefing with passengers and explain all of that to them. Now, sometimes people are desperate and they're going to say, "Oh, sure, I can do that." I'm not going to say it never happens, that it can be a challenge, but for the most part, you'll find that they're able to get in. To Andy's point of him being a contortionist, sometimes the passengers will struggle a bit, but they'll manage to get in.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Appreciate
And
it.
if you ever have a problem with a passenger, you be sure to let us know.
Yeah.
Yeah, hi, this is Scott Kearns. Just had a quick comment about the use of the Angelfly call sign. Just in my experience, and information was fantastic. Thank you. And I think you captured a lot of those initial emotions and kind of curiosities we have before we do the first mission. And one of the things I was struggling with was using the Angelflight call sign, how to do that. I read the information that was kind of listed through the Angel Flight West website, and it was a bit challenging and kind of a little concerning about, going in and reprogramming a different broadcast in my ADSB and such. And I have a G1000 perspective setup. Long story short, I simply just duplicated my ForeFlight profile, and in that changed the call sign to my Angel Flight call sign, filed that way, and it worked beautifully. So just a quick tip with that. I suspect you probably do the same thing in Garmin Pilot, but I didn't make any avionics changes, no modifications to the G1000 setup, just simply filed under that call sign. And when I called to pick up my clearance, it was super buttery smooth, no issues. So just want to share that experience.
You are supposed to change the broadcast call sign in the transponder. So like ATC, you might encounter controllers who might get snippy with you. But you can just do that, file and use it. But you're not technically supposed to unless you change the broadcast from the ADSB.
Interesting. Okay. Well, thank you. It came as a recommendation from somebody within. So that's the route that I took, and it was butter smooth from SoCal to Bakersfield all the way up to NorCal. Everybody was awesome. So I was tremendous.
It's totally just depend on the controllers you get if somebody wants to be
Gotcha.
snippy, because it gets a little confusing for them on the screen, because what they see on their screen will just have your N number. And when you file it, obviously both things are in there. But it's easier for them if they see the NGF call sign on their like radar display.
Gotcha. Okay. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I suspect what might happen, Scott, is you may get a call from David or Rochelle. We get a monthly, not every month, but almost every month, we get a report where there are call sign mismatches. So you may be on that list. Again, there may be others on it too, not pointing you out. And if so, you'll just get a call from us saying, "Hey, you showed up as a call sign mismatch. Please don't do that." And by the way, you mentioned that you heard that from within it, not here in front of everybody.
Yes.
But if you heard that from an Angel Flight staff person, would you reach out to me and let me know, please?
Of course.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, the
FAA remind me of one thing I forgot to say in that call sign section, which is Scott just covered it. But when you do want to use the call sign, if you're filing IFR, there is a field when you file in the ICAO form, which obviously is what ForeFlight or whoever is using, for a call sign that is separate from your N number. So put the call sign in that field when you file instrument, or if you file a visual flight plan. If you take off VFR, you don't need to file. You just start using the Angel Flight call sign in the air. Again, assuming you've just changed your transponder. So as soon as you call up any kind of air traffic facility, tower, NorCal, et cetera, like just start saying Angel Flight with the numbers. As long as you've already changed your transponder.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
so
the
much.
FAA really is cracking down on that ADSB mismatch. So they kind of threatened is too strong a word, but they kind of did say, "Hey, if you guys can't get this under control, we're going to have to take the call sign away." So that's why Sherry gets those reports. We've asked to, in compliance with that we'll follow up on them, because we're kind of the big mismatches are within kind of the commercial airspace, but we are lumped in there with that. So that is something that the FAA is really trying to crack down on. So that's why those reports come, but the ADSB does need to match the call sign.
Very good.
Yeah, very quick and easy firmware upgrade. Like, again, I just haven't done it because I haven't gotten to a Garmin dealer, but anytime you swing by a Garmin dealer, they can do it in a few seconds, is my understanding. They just really need to input a authorization thing to unlock that feature, and then it appears on the G1000 on the PFD.
Very good. Thanks so much. Appreciate that. Thanks for the clarification.
Thank you. Any other questions?
My name is Rob. I I did all the training for command pilot, but I don't have enough hours. I was interested in coming on as mission assistant in the meantime. And I found it a little difficult. Should I be able to request missions as a mission assistant in the app, or what's the best way to get on as a mission assistant?
Yeah, Rob, I know it's difficult and I apologize for that. Where are you located?
Southern California, Orange County, Los Angeles.
Okay. So Rochelle is not here today. She's out in an appointment, but I will make a note and Rochelle will reach out to you and talk to you about some of the ways that we can try and get you as mission assistant on a couple of flights.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thanks.
Sure. Any other questions? Okay, what I would like to do, and she doesn't know I'm going to say this, but I'm going to call her anyway and surprise her a little bit. But Andy, you mentioned flying Erica and the text she sent you about being grateful. Julia had a conversation with Erica as well. Julia, you know where I'm going?
Maybe.
About Flights of Joy.
Yeah, just you want me to speak a little bit about what we spoke about?
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, every year we do this little program. We call it Flights of Joy. We sent emails out to all the pilots. People had the opportunity to join. Basically, you became Santa Claus and went shopping for families that really needed some help during the holidays. And believe me, some of these families were very clear that without the Angel Flight, some of their kids may not have had a Christmas. Julia was speaking to Erica one day and
Yeah, and so she has a 10-year-old Walker and she's a single mom. So navigating being there for Walker while also being in the Bay Area for treatment has been a challenge for her. That's been helped a lot by the wonderful pilots getting her back and forth. But I want to say I did the onboarding with her when she first reached out to us for help with getting out there. And she said she has this 10-year-old and how tough it's been for him. And if he could come sometimes, he'd love it and so on. So throughout the year, when we kind of identify families like that, we'll put them on a list. Come Christmas time, we reached out to her. They ended up bringing the gifts to her and Walker while they were out in the Bay Area. And she just went on and on about how this is the best Christmas that Walker would ever have. But he said to her over and over again, I love all my presents, but I would take you not having cancer over this, Mom, but these presents are really cool. And I was on speaker with him in the car once, and he was just from the back seat was like, thanks for the presents, Angel Flight. Like, I love you guys. So yeah, super sweet. And she was very deserving of that.
Oh, that we'd end on a fun note, and just another way that the volunteers that are here today, the great impact that you can have on people's lives. And I think sometimes you don't realize that just a small act can make a huge difference in those lives of people that we serve every day. So thank you very much.